Welcome to the Original Gangsters Patreon members only. And I want to share something that I kind of found out recently in some of my research for some other stuff that I wanted to kind of bring into focus here, and doing a lot of reporting on the Colombo crime family lately, reporting on Sally Bread passing away, the former acting boss, Brooklyn skipper, who replaced him. We reported that it was Vinny Mataloni, who, former professional boxer, has replaced Sally Bread as a skipper. And then we also reported that Joe Waverly is now in the administration. This is all in service of the last great Mafia dynasty, the last Mafia dynasty, period, pretty much, now that it looks like the Rizzutos are fading and fading fast. The Persico Mafia dynasty out of Brooklyn, the Colombo crime family is really, that's old school, man. To have a bloodline, run a family for almost 50 years now. And the fact that Persico himself, Carmine Persico Jr., aka the Snake, the patriarch, the architect of this dynasty, he led the family. He died in 2019. He led that family for basically 40 years plus. All but 36 months he was in prison. So how did he do that? And we all know about the war that took place in the 90s when Little Vic Arena tried to unseat him. And there was a bloodbath for a couple of years there, 91, 92, 93. 30 years removed from that, Persico's still on top. Teddy Persico coming out of prison in a year or two to take the throne and continue the dynasty. But I think I love finding kind of like underreported aspects of big stories that sometimes get lost in the shuffle. And from doing some of this research, I found that a big reason Persico was able to get this dynasty or this regime stood up, even though he was locked up. It makes sense when you think about guys that were on the street or just take Vic Musso for an example. Vic Musso was boss for about 5 years before he got locked up. So he'd already had kind of this ability to lay foundation. Persico was boss, from Jump Street. He was locked up pretty much. So how did he get this whole thing stood up? And from what I've found, and I'm burning the lead a little bit here, was through federal moles, guys that were within the government that were helping him out. And it made me start thinking, when all the Buffalo reporting we've been doing, and Joe Bongiovanni, who was the Magadino crime family's inside guy in the DA. This situation was in some ways similar. And Carmine Persico was being aided by a IRS agent who was actually like a triple agent, in the sense that it looked like he was a double agent, but in fact, he was a triple agent. It looked like he was a corrupt IRS agent wanting to help the Persicos and the Colombos. But it looked like at the end of the day, he was really just a Fed that was acting corrupt. There's still people that debate that, but that's kind of the final word in terms of the court filings. And then a BOP official in Washington, D.C., was also on the payroll. And this allowed Persico to get transfers from federal prisons around the country back to New York City for multiple meetings that proved critical in getting this regime off the ground and stabilized and structured. And it wouldn't have been possible without the moles, guys that were greasing wheels within the government to help Persico. And a lot of it started in 1977 when a Colombo soldier, labor union goon, restaurant and nightclub owner from Long Island named Victor Puglisi, they called him Riverhead Vic, Got an introduction to a guy named Richie Anachirico, who was an IRS agent through a cousin of Anachirico's who bet with Puglisi. And starting in the summer of 77, they started feeding bribes to Anachirico, and those bribes would get Carmine Persico moved from Atlanta, where he was doing time, or Kentucky, where he was doing time. And for weeks at a time, he'd be allowed to go to New York. I mean, the government would take him there and put him in a federal facility in Manhattan or in Brooklyn, and he could take his meetings and make his promotions and give his orders. You had, every leader in the Colombo crime family coming to kiss his ring. Summer of 77, Christmas 77 through early 78. By 79, he was in Kentucky, and some of that had ceased. But because of his ties into BOP, he was able to get exclusive privileges at Ashland, which was Ashland, Kentucky, still a federal facility there. And I guess for his 46th birthday, August of 1979, threw a huge party that the grounds of the federal facility, like, sectioned off a part of the prison for him to throw this party where people were coming in from around the country to wish him a happy birthday in prison. And Peter Luger's, I guess, the famous steak place, flew in food. He was brought to New York for the holidays so he could hold meetings and see his family in the holidays, all because of bribes. And I would guess that this was a major factor, or I would say this was a major factor in allowing him to get things started smoothly from behind bars. The BOP guy, his name was Ernie Goss, was also arranging transfers for, or I should say assignments and placements for other guys in the Colombos that had a lot of juice that wanted certain prison assignments. I know Danbury was a place that everybody wanted to get to because it was so close to New York City. That's where Persico was put in the early 80s. And Ernie Goss was somebody who liked the fringe benefits of running around with the Mafia. And Persico, through his son, Little Alley Boy, was arranging for Goss to take these VIP trips to Vegas, VIP trips to Atlantic City. And then they were also, shredding documents, blocking cases. Charlie Moose Panarella, Little Dom Cataldo got cases against them thrown out before they hit indictments because of these payoffs. Eventually, they'd all be indicted for these bribery schemes. When people talk about James Caan attending trials for Persico, that was the first trial that he popped his head out in. I think he went to the commission trial in the early 80s. But in 1981 or 82, James Caan showed up at Carmine Persico's bribery trial. Andy Mush Russo, Persico's first cousin and street boss, James Caan's childhood best friend, stood up for Andy Mush at his wedding. And Caan came right in during this bribery trial before the day's testimony, and went and gave Russo a big hug and a kiss, and gave Carmine Persico a big hug and a kiss. And the government didn't like it. They thought they was trying to, sway the jury. But they all got convicted. It seems like a lot of work for a short sentence. Persico ended up doing 2 years on it, I think. And if it's true that this Anachirico if everything was on the level, and Anachirico was a clean IRS agent pretending to be a dirty IRS agent, and you let the thing go on for 3 or 4 years, it seems like it. Again, we're about 45 years removed from this, almost 50 years removed from it. But it seems like if it was some type of top secret government undercover, and that's what it is, I guess, officially, it seems like you were helping these guys a lot more than you were hurting them. if you were giving them 3 years of free transfers and being able to hold meetings in New York and special privileges for meetings at other federal facilities and cases getting tossed and evidence being destroyed, it just seems like these guys got a big benefit for 3 or 4 years to end up only having to do a relatively short period of time in prison. I think Carmine Persico had to do 2 years. Came out, was free for about a year or two before he went back in and never saw the light of day. So it just was something I wanted to share with you guys because of what's happening in Buffalo, and then my research brought me to this. And I think it really contextualizes, because I don't know if a boss who's just in prison down in Atlanta, in that situation, would have been able to get things as structured, as steady and stable as they were for the next decade until things became unstable in the 90s. But, it's like when the bones are good, there's a song like When the Bones Are Good, it's, they withstood that hurricane of the 90s, but it's the mid 2020s right now. And they're still on top. And I think a lot of that had to do with those first couple of years with Persico being able to kind of move freely about the country, even though in shackles, and hold meetings because he was paying off the government. That's my story for today. Check back. I promise we're gonna have some more interviews coming out where you guys here at the Members Only will get the full director's cut. I'm aiming to get, like, I don't want to overpromise, but a half dozen at least interviews between now and Christmas. Really exclusive stuff, people that you never heard from before. We're just trying to lock down dates and times, and we've been about a month shy of long form interviews, and that's one of the reasons that you pay for Members Only, that you're going to get the first look at them and then get the longer cut of it. So I promise that I'm working hard behind the scenes to give you a lot of that as the holidays approach. Scott Burnstein, OG Pod, I'm out.